Hi, Josh here, normally with the channel ZZZ Giant Awake and the Recklessly Skeptical podcast, but it's Saturday on the Breakfast Club. So I wanted to continue what got that funk started on Monday, and he was talking about the Republican nomination and the idea of a convention and a contested convention. So what happens is both parties, the Democratic and the Republican Party, hold their respective conventions to select a candidate. Now, normally on the Republican side by this point in the general election, especially when there's a clear-cut leading person like there is now, the rest of the candidates drop out and align to support the candidate. And in this time, it looks like that's not going to be the case. It looks like there are at least one candidate, if not two, that are going to go all the way to the convention and run to try and create a contested convention. In order to win, you have to have a majority of the votes or of the delegates. The delegates number, I think, was 1,237 for the Republican side. The only person who has a reasonable chance of getting there, unless two other candidates drop, is Donald Trump. Right now, John Kasich would need 125% of the remaining delegates approximately, and Ted Cruz would need about 75, which is impossible realistically with two other candidates still running. Now Donald Trump needs I think it was 54% of the remaining delegates to get there. But if he doesn't get there, then what happens is they have the convention, the delegates, which are real human beings, vote, and that's how they select. So there will be two articles in the box below that you'll need to that you might be interested in checking out if you're really interested in this process. So the likelihood of Donald Trump getting to 12,037 delegates without picking up some unpledged delegates on the first ballot is looking less and less likely the longer that Cruz and Kasich stay in and the more the party unifies to stop Trump. It seems like a lot of people in the party are now pushing for that. It looks like Trump might be damaging overall to the Republican Party in such a way that it is created such a movement against him that, I mean, it's unseen before. It's unprecedented. We've never had a candidate who draws so much ire from other people in their party. And the damage that he might do would be long-lasting because outside of one or two states, the young voters, which are the voters of the future, tend to prefer not Trump. So what's likely to happen is that he won't get to 12,037 by picking up unpledged delegates, which will mean that they go to a second ballot. And at that point, I believe most of the pledges or the delegates become unpledged and can vote any way they like. The delegate selection process is a strange process. It's where somebody steps up and says, hey, I'll pay for my flight and my ticket and my food and both ways to go to and from the convention. Now, it's important early on in case this happens, which it hasn't happened in decades, if ever, in the modern Republican Party. You want to make sure that people who support you, even if they're going to have to vote somebody else the first time, are going to vote for you the second time. And Cruz has done a good job at selecting candidates that he wants to go in, even though they'll vote for Trump the first ballot. Once they become unpledged, they can vote for whoever they want the second ballot, which, again, likely, if Cruz is helping to select, is going to be Cruz people. It's also going to be interesting on how they make the case because it seems undemocratic. Now, something that Got That Funk said that I don't think is true is that I don't think we select delegates to stop a tyrant from getting into place. But I think the reason that there's a delegate selection, and I can see why people would think that that's the reason for having delegates, but I think the reason is because historically it's difficult to have a actual true democratic vote with more than 1 million people, and now we're at 300 million people and counting. I think it's more like 350 million people in the United States. So to track all those ballots or all of those votes would be extremely difficult. So what you do is you have your division area, and then you can send somebody by horse to report to the state, and then then they can travel to wherever the convention is. So it's more of a old convenience and a necessity in older days than it was we'll stop the tyrant, because as long as the Constitution is in place and we're running through the Constitution, we shouldn't have any risk of there being a tyrant in place, because you would impeach somebody who's a tyrant. They would no longer be seen by the other branches of government as being the legitimate executive power. So I don't think that's the case. There are some weird things about the delegate process in these conventions, though, and they're what I think it was Nate Silver who wrote the article. I know Nate Silver is the one who runs 538, the website. Again, that'll be in the box below. He tends to think first off, they use the statistic 63% is the chances that it will not happen in the first ballot. As in, if you're a voting person, you should vote against Trump winning the nomination in the first ballot. Now, if he doesn't win it in the first ballot, can he pull over enough? With the facts that I've said earlier on in this clip, I don't think so. I don't know how that convention is going to play out, and it may take a few days for it to get sorted out, because it's going to be a shit show like no other before. I talk about this in a movie on my channel, and I'll link that in the description as well. It's called Damned If You Don't Do, Damned If You Don't, or I think Republicans Damned If You Do / don't. And in that video, I talk about if they don't select Trump, they might disenfranchise a lot of people who think that Trump rightfully should be the winner, because at this point in most candidacies, everybody's aligning behind the front runner, which is clearly Donald Trump. And they also might say, well, we democratically as a nation selected Donald Trump to be our leader 49 to 44% against Ted Cruz. So you would say, well, it's obvious that if we're going off of votes and caucuses and stuff like that, Donald Trump should be our nominee. It's going to be interesting. I mean, in the conventions, there's also this weird thing that the rules are created by the delegates and enforced by the delegates, and prior rules can be ignored by the delegates or voted away by the delegates. And so there's a small chance, and this would be what Nate Silver, or the person who wrote the article on 538, called the nuclear option, where they fight to become unpledged before the first ballot. There's also unloyal pledges, which are pledges that refuse to vote even though they were selected to vote a specific way. Both of those things would create an even bigger nightmare. So the second article that I linked in the description talks about, it's from one of Trump's insiders, and it's on MSN, and I think that it was originally posted on Fiscal Times, and I referenced that in my most recent movie on my channel, which I won't link in the description. If you want to find it, just look up ZZZ Giant Awake. And it's where the party insider to Trump, for one of his PACs, said that he never intended on winning the nomination, that he was shooting to have a tightly fought second place. If that's the case, this type of convention, a contested convention, would be his way to exit out. Now, the question is, even if that's what he wants, is he going to exit out quietly, or is he going to make a big fuss? If he exits out and says, no, Ted Cruz should be the winner, he was the more qualified candidate, etc., and so on, then there's a chance that it might not be as bad as I'm thinking it might be. But there's been no indication that he is going to support any candidate besides himself, because when he drops out, it'll make him look like a victim and make the rallying behind him more substantial. So this should be the most interesting part of the entire election process. And there's some really interesting stuff going up on the Democratic side as well between Bernie and Hillary. But you're going to see some unprecedented stuff that we may never see again in our lifetimes. So there's a lot to look forward to as far as United States law goes, if you're nerdy about that like I am, and about how the election process works. So look forward to that if you are into that. Otherwise, just be ready for a media shit show where to the point where you can't stand turning on the television set, because that's all they'll be talking about right around that convention time. So that's my video for today. I look forward to talking more about this, and if you guys want to request videos for my channel, please comment in the comment section, or if you think I missed out on something or misexplained something, please also comment in the comment section. I'll be happy to put a correction in another video if I did so. Thank you guys though. Be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, and Peach, we will see you tomorrow. Take care.